We're moving to item 4 on the open board agenda. Is the consent agenda.
I'll move the consent agenda. Second.
Hold on, we have one item to remove,
Oh, yes.
which is item 4.1.1, which are the regular board draft meeting minutes of March 22nd and 23rd. And anything else? So I'll move that we remove that and place it
As item 5.
as item 5. Right. Do we need a seconder?
Let's do it all together.
Okay,
Move
So
it and
we're gonna
approve
do
it,
that.
and it-
with that change, I need a motion to
Okay, that's-
approve the consent agenda, seconded
Uh,
moved by Director Maris.
I want-
Sorry. a question
sorry,
by Director Pettigrew.
Consent, I want to pull the solid waste, the Metro Vancouver guiding principles.
So also under correspondence for information, item 4.2.1,
4.2.2.
4.2.2. Okay. So that will be under business arising from the minutes. As you
Oh,
know.
no, we'll pop that into correspondence for action as item 10.4.
All right. With those two items removed, Director Demare is still in favor of
I'll move
the
that.
consent agenda, moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Rainbow. No one is opposed to that. Motion carried. So.
Okay.
Yes, so, no, would you like to?
I would be happy to.
Oh, thank you so much.
So the March board meeting minutes were pulled because there was a typo discovered. So we will be amending those item 13.2, which is a late funding item. Area A was referenced as PILT, the Area A PILT funds, whereas it should be Area B. So we would like to make that change and have the board adopt those minutes as corrected. Please.
Motion to adopt by Director Sal of Area A.
Thank you,
Seconded by
Director Jones, for
Matt.
seeing that.
Pleasure. No one is opposed. Okay, that's carried. And we can move on. We to 6 committee reports and recommendations. 6.1 electoral area director committee recommendation. Fifth. One, 6.
Can I do the whole lot?
Yes, please.
How many are there?
Director Rainbow would like to move.
Including the rescinded one?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so I'll move all of those that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Seconded by Director Demare. Anyone opposed to that? Seeing none, motion carried. 6.12, Director's Report, increase in the electoral area Director's remuneration. Director Rainbow. Ron.
Yeah, I know. Well, okay, I want to refer to. I brought this up originally before the end of last term. And the argument I sort of raised or introduced was that I feel that we need to increase the stipend paid to electoral area directors to change the sort of the way that the job is viewed by residents in the electoral areas, and as a way of attracting more people to be interested in it. And we've had one acclamation after another for the last several years. It's really difficult to find people that are interested in running for this position. And one of the reasons that I discovered in trying to find someone to run for this term was that there are people interested, younger people, and I was particularly interested in younger people. You know, if you look around at our EAD directors, we're all retired.
Yeah.
We're all, and I was looking at people over there that are younger than my kids. You know, yeah. And one of the things the feedback I was getting was, I can't afford to do that. You know, and if that one woman I was talking to, she has a part-time job, and when in discussing with me what this job involved, she says, I wouldn't be able to do two. I wouldn't be able to do the part-time job and do that job. And your job pays way less than I'm getting in my part-time job. So no, I can't do it, even though I'm interested. And so that's the motivation behind this. To broaden the pool of people that would be interested in running for this position. So we might even have elections, which is much better in a democracy, rather than have sort of volunteers just show up and say, I'll do it for a while. Now, when it was first discussed, Director Elliott and it was suggested that, we'll refer it to HR, and we'll do a study of how much is paid around the province. But at the same time, we talked about maybe putting the increase in 4 equal payments, and I thought that's the direction we were going. I thought the board was fairly comfortable with that. And then I discovered a month or so ago that that's not happening. That there's no provision in the budget for an increase this year. That we're waiting to hear what the results are of this review of what happens in other regional districts. Quite frankly, I'm not interested in what happens in other regional districts. I know what happens in other regional districts. They pay it the same or less than we do. And I'm not proposing that we come to an average across the province and maybe go 10% above that or something like that. I'm talking about a radical change, that we increase this amount, and we likely be one of 2 regional districts in the province that do it, that get to that sort of level. And I think if we do that, we have a really positive impact on the conduct of elections and selection of people for this position. I think we might be in a position of leadership in the province. You know, I think that I wouldn't have any problem trying to justify it with other regional districts if people were complaining that we were setting a precedent. We set precedent before. We have a policy for maternity leave for young women that are elected as directors for the regional district, or municipal directors appointed to the regional district. We didn't do that specifically for Jenna. It just so happens that she benefited from it. But we did that because we thought that was the right thing to do. That by having that sort of a policy in place, it would perhaps encourage younger women to look at this as something that they could afford to do and that would fit in with their lifestyle. This change I'm suggesting is the same kind of thing. Would we benefit? Yes, a little bit. You know, what the main benefit would be if when we come to the next election cycle, when I go out trying to find people in my area, when my colleagues go out to try, how many of us are retiring? I know I am for sure. There's absolutely no way I'm going beyond this term. So I'm going to be active. I'm already talking to people, and one of the things I'm saying to them is we're hoping that there'll be more pay. And when I say that, then I've got one person interested for sure, but I know she won't be if the salary stays the same. So and I mentioned Director Elliott, so let me go back to her. She made the comment when there was a suggestion, let's go to HR and we check out what other regional districts are doing. She said, that doesn't capture what Tony's trying to do. So she did pick that up, and it doesn't. What are we going to do? We wait for that study to come in, and we find out that we're about average. Okay, so what? I don't want us to be average. I want us to sort of set an example, set a precedent, and do something that is different.
I see Director Richmond.
I totally agree with all your preamble and your intention, and I know it's not to benefit the people around the table, it's to get more interest in the roles, and I totally support that. I think we need to do that across a lot of municipal governments. I do kind of want, and so I support 99% of what you just said. I do kind of want to see, I mean, it's not hitting this budget cycle this year, so I'm not sure why we need to pass the motion now. I would like to see the report through HR and to see what other communities are doing, because I don't know what average is. So when you say I don't want to be average, I don't even know what average is. So I only struggle with, how are we picking these numbers? These numbers are based on some thoughts from the, and I'm sure some good discussion around it, but I would personally like to have something to compare with. And like I say, we're not hitting this for this year's second budget anyway. This won't come into effect till next year. So I don't see the harm in waiting. Again, I'm in total support of that direction. I think we need to do it. And I would agree with you. We need more and more candidates to step up, and compensation is a huge part of why that doesn't happen. So totally in support of it, but I would like to have a few more numbers in front of me and understand what other communities are doing, just to give me a reference point, not because I disagree. Like I say, I don't know what average is, and Sarah, so making a statement, well, I don't want to be average, we want to be above, I don't even know what that means. So not being in a hurry, I would personally like to wait and to see when, and I'd also like to see how municipal directors factor into that whole review as well. I think there's a relevance there as well. So seeing that information would help me have this discussion a little bit better.
Director Crompton.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I would like to see what counselors make. Yeah, like I'd like to see some work done to be able to inform this decision. I think it's not great practice to just make a budgetary decision of this size without actually having a report to back it up. Things like there's some assumptions in this document about 40 hours a week, and there's some things in there that I think would be good to really understand what is being asked of someone who takes on the job. I think one of the interesting pieces is that this decision says this is not a part-time job, this is a full-time job, and we are expressing that through the documents that are written and the wage that is paid. So that's a part of the report that I'd like to see as well. But I think Director Richmond and Director Rainbow make a good point. We need to get this right so that people are interested in the work, or will have, people not choose to take on these roles, and that won't be a good future for us. But I would like to see a report.
And I saw Director Pettingill.
Yeah, for me, I'm a little less concerned about what other jurisdictions are paying, because at the end of the day, if we're not paying enough to have people in the roles, I mean, that's ultimately what matters. But I think where I have a question or uncertainty is with some of the stuff that Director Crompton brought up around the expectations of the role. And the sense I have is that the individuals who are electoral area directors are doing things above and beyond what I consider a regional district director does. And so maybe that does deserve compensation and recognition, but is it a separate role, and it's a two-hat situation? And just so for me, this is more of a governance discussion, and I personally would be opposed to sort of, I think this is in the topic area I was thinking the governance committee would be looking at anyways, but understanding what exactly are the expectations of, is there a difference in expectation between electoral area director and a municipal director? Are there different things, different authority, different responsibility? And what does that look like? And then from there, I think it's okay, so then what compensation is fair and reasonable and gets us the people we need into the positions? So I guess that's sort of what I'm looking.
what I was concerned about, sorry,
Please proceed.
the reason I brought this up again is, I was concerned that we just said, okay, send it to HR, get this, and it would just die there, it wouldn't really go anywhere. So if we want to come out of this with some kind of direction that we will actively sort of pursue this, and I'm quite prepared to do some more work and come back with more detail in terms of monies and levels and yeah, compare to have a look at what's happening elsewhere. I know one regional district, the Nanaimo, has a stipend which is considerably higher than ours, and I suspect they did it for the same kind of reason, to attract people. When few years ago, I think it was at UBCM, it might have been no, it was at UBCM. There was a proposal to change the name of electoral area directors from director to mayor. And there was a lot
as much as I do.
I agree. I move that we high wage.
that wasn't tied to money as such, but what it was trying to do was demonstrate or illustrate the complexity of the job. In this way, it is a different job from the municipal director. And if you look at the compensation that we pay here, if you're appointed by a municipality to this board, I think your stipend is around 16,000, 17,000, something like that. So if you look at what's required, what do you have to do for that? And it's coming to meetings and reading, and you know that. But we have to do all that as well. So you could say that we're level at that point. So then you want to look at, well, what do we do that beyond the things that you do? And it's time consuming and it's fairly complex. And, you know, as I said, and as you can see, we're limiting the pool of people to select from. You're basically saying that for somebody to do this, they've got to have another income. We will have pensions, and you know, I can look at this as a, well, maybe, sorry, you know, I can look at this as something that I've done all my life. I've always done some kind of community service, whether it's running kids' athletics associations or whether it's running a food bank or whatever. And I've had a full-time job as well. So now I've got a pension, and so I can look at this as being sort of that kind of contribution to my community. With that, I want to broaden the pool, broaden the pool. I don't know whatever the term might be.
I see that
So-
Director Demare wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, a couple of things. I've done a priority list for Area A, and me and Mr. Dalton will be reviewing it here in about a couple of May 1st. And in it, I've got it separated what staff is doing as one section. Another section is staff and others, and that's where I also fit in there. And then another section, just me, what I'm doing. And maybe I'll share that with you. And you do a lot. And, you know, over and above, not only working with staff on things and so on and so forth, but you're doing a lot. You know, the funding that we have, I've got spreadsheets for PILT, Select, and gas tax. I got spreadsheets so I keep track of what I've committed, what's been approved, so on and so forth. Because there's a lot of organizations that are coming out here for funding. On one thing that you'll never see on a EAD director is safety. Safety is a big part of the electoral area. roads, fire, the list goes on and on. And who's dealing with that?
All right, I see Director Richmond and also
Yeah.
Director Herford.
I'm just wondering if we're having the conversation now, or if I could maybe make a motion that staff bring back a report when time is right, including some information about other communities, including some discussion about the role and responsibilities.
Yeah.
So we can bring it up.
I'm not finished yet, please.
Okay.
And one of the things I've talked about is when we're doing this governance is terms of reference. Terms of reference for municipal directors, terms of reference for the chair, terms of reference for the vice chair, and terms of reference for the electoral area directors. Once we've got those, okay, we don't have those. We need those so that when people know what we're supposed to be doing.
Okay, at the risk of annoying a very important person and driver. I don't think we're debating the value of the electoral area directors as the job more.
Well,
The rate of
but
pay.
it all comes into this stipend thing, right?
But I do have
Yeah.
a speakers list and I had Director Herford and I think then Director Brompton. Is that
I
correct?
think Director.
And Director Pettingill or Director Richmond again, sorry.
Would you point of order, my
Yes.
understanding what happened was that you were, sorry, through the chair, Director Demare was finished and you called on Director Richmond to speak. So I think should be noted that Director Richmond was called on to speak at that point. Anyway.
Thank you.
Point of order, it would have been nice to ask me if I was finished.
And I did, but I'm trying to also kind of keep some momentum going in the meeting. And I feel some of the debate is not going to be resolved at this table today. And I'm trying to keep us on whether or not we're going to move on this motion or entertain another one related to this. So the next person I have on the speakers list is Director Herford.
Thank you. I share your concerns with having a deep pool of choices for the electorate for these positions. And I think this is a challenge in our municipalities as well. I think in the previous election, we had 22 folks run for the 6 seats, and we had 10 this time. So, but the remuneration and the scope of the work was essentially equal throughout. So there are other factors that contribute to that. But I do think that this is an important piece of it. And I think Director Demare makes some great points around the scope of work and making sure that we understand it. And I think that plays into Director Richmond's point around having some more information before we make an impactful decision such as this. So I think this is a great topic, and thank you for Director Rainbow for raising it. I think that carts and horses need to align a little bit differently just to get all the way through and give everyone the comfort with it. And perhaps that process, we're going to find that some more staff is required to take on some of those roles, or it's a conscious decision not to do that and to have the area director take some of that load as well. So there's a bunch of things to parse apart here, and I feel that without that urgency, I don't see the timing urgency for it. Although I do see the importance of the topic. So I don't think this is the path forward with the information we have today, but I absolutely think that it deserves more study. So I've heard the starting of motions down the way, so I won't venture my own, but I think some more work needs to be done here before I'd be comfortable advancing something like this.
Thank you. And I think Director Richmond, did I miss you?
I was starting to present a motion, but it's all good. Just something along the lines of that staff bring back, or that we defer this conversation to a committee of the whole when we've received the report from HR on compensation, as well as include the scope of the role and I don't know how else to phrase that, but the scope of the role of the EADs and the municipal directors as part of that discussion.
Okay,
That was
so,
really, really clumsy. I wasn't thinking about emotion anymore, but you can refine that if you like.
and I didn't want to miss Director Pettingill. As I think you wanted to speak.
Well, I just, two questions for Seth. What is where are we in the process of this remuneration report?
Yes. Jan.
So through the chair, Q3 is when we were planning to bring that forward to the board so that it would be in line with the budget process for 2024.
And then
Thank you.
my other question, and I'm not sure if it's to Director Rainbow or to CO Dalton, is this something in terms of the role? In my mind, this was probably an earlier conversation for the governance committee. Is that your understanding in terms of the scope of the work? Or is that something we need to ask the committee to look at?
Please go ahead. Yeah. CO Dalton.
Yeah, through the chair, I would see that work being taken up by the policy recommendation and review committee. Is that the name of the committee? Policy review.
Development and review.
Isn't it governance excellence? Isn't there excellence in there somewhere?
It's in brackets.
Okay.
But the role, the terms of reference for directors is something that should be led by that committee and supported by the review. So that's where I personally would see that work being done. I wouldn't see staff doing that work as part of the remuneration piece.
Great, and so I guess what I'm wondering if it's already sort of in that committee's work plan, we respect, or we need to recommend that the committee bring back the scope piece.
Yeah, and I've got through the chair, I've got a note for that committee here. The next report to that committee's in June, and we hopefully have a consultant with a plan, and we'll make sure that that's in front of the committee so they can direct where that fits into priorities.
So there are two pieces of work going on that will provide more information to inform this decision.
Yes.
Okay.
So it doesn't sound like I need a motion then. It sounds like everything.
I think there's previous motions on the table for the remuneration piece, and I think to Director Pettingill's point, the mandate is the committees. I want to try the name again. The committees.
This is
These are working.
the committee.
That's right.
Yeah.
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 Fair point. Yeah.
Are there other comments?
I'll just make a brief comment on that.
Please
I'm
proceed.
completely satisfied with that. I was worried that it would just disappear into the wherever and wouldn't get dealt with. What we've suggested here is that there'll be some decision by the end of by next budget cycle. So that I'm completely happy with that. Thank you very much.
All right.
So
Do we need to do anything with that report, receive for information, or do we need to vote on it and vote it down so that this rest of this process can go just to proceed, just procedurally? I think we all know the direction that we're going, just.
I'm waiting to hear from Director
The
Clark.
motion can be withdrawn, Director Richards.
He did.
I don't think it was seconded either, right?
No, it was not seconded, so that's fine.
So I'll withdraw the
Thank you.
motion.
We can just receive.
just receive it.
I'll just withdraw my motion and receive Director Rainbow's.
Thank you. Motion to receive from Director Richmond, second by Director Herford. And does anyone oppose? Seeing none, motion to receive is carried. Thank you. Point 1.3, it's also Director Rainbow. This is with the Britannia Beach Playground. Anybody there? Okay.
Yeah, we just. Where am I? This is a month ago I wrote this. Yeah, we didn't need a little bit of money to finish off the playground, and there was some suggestion it should come from select funds, and I don't know. The project was funded by a Community Works Fund. We've got a little money left in that, which has to be spent this year. So up to $6,000 we allocated from Area D select funds. This
Sorry, up to $6,000 from Area D Select.
oh
Funds.
so no, it's that's if not possible. Another. I'm sorry. Staff be requested to cover the costs required to complete the playground project from the Community Works Fund. So that's the
Area
first
D.
part. And if that's not possible, and I'd need to check with Suzanne on that, then I will cover it out of select. But I prefer it to come out of the Community Works Fund.
Now, are we okay with that motion?
So I believe Director LaFrance have already confirmed that it's can come from community works funds.
Actually,
Yeah, which is why it's here at the board as opposed to at EAD.
okay, very good. So then I just need to move the first of that.
Just said that on the agenda, correct?
Yeah.
So moved by Director Rainbow and seconded by Director Demare. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Item 6.1.
Can I just, sorry, one other thing. On this playground, we've got a name that the Squamish Nation came up with in working with the Britannia Beach Community Association. And as you know, when you look at some Indigenous names, you wonder how the heck do you pronounce it? And so what they've come up with is a QR code that's going to be on the side, and that will tell you how to say it. So, which I thought was kind of neat. But I wanted to highlight that because if you're thinking of doing things in your communities using Indigenous names, and that's a way of kind of bringing some life into them. So, thank you.
Thank you. 6.1.4 is a request for funding, Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council.
I'd like to move this, please.
Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Demare. Is there any discussion, opposition? Seeing none, motion carried. Wonderful. Now we're on to 7, bylaws. Unweighted all vote, 2/3 majority is required for bylaws changes. So we'll do them individually. 7.1. Request for decision, the building bylaw 1611-2020 amendment bylaw number 1816-2023. Good morning. Thank you for being here. Staff has a report. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. The bylaw amendment was initially proposed to the AD and referred back to staff for more information on what the step code and the changes revisions to the BC building code actually mean. Staff revised the report, issued additional information, and we are back asking for a decision to allow residents the option of using a certified energy advisor or not to meet the performance or prescriptive requirements of Part 3 of the BC Energy Step Code as of May 1st.
Thank you. Have we got questions for staff? Director Pettingill.
So my understanding is that I think also in May, the ability to regulate emissions as opposed to just efficiency is coming online, and from what I heard in other sources is that a step 5 building with gas heat creates much more emissions than a step 1 with electric. And so I'm not sure how much gas is an issue in many parts of the SLRD anyways. So I guess where I'm wondering is, do we expect a second amendment to incorporate emissions standards, or are we going to stick with the sort of just efficiency piece for the next while? Or
Through the chair, the staff's plan at the moment was just energy efficiency to ease rural residents into the new reality of the requirements of the BC Building Code. As far as your question regarding gas, there's very few communities within the SRD that are connected to natural gas. People that elect to use fuel-powered appliances are mostly propane, and the vast majority of people don't heat their houses through propane. So the greenhouse gas emissions part of the Energy Step Code is less applicable to residents of the SLRD than it would be to larger municipalities connected to those services. So we can look at bringing in those requirements down the road, but as of right now, this was the more urgent of the requirements of what we needed to move to pass via bylaw. So.
We had a good discussion about the SEPI EAD. Thank you. Go ahead, Director Demare.
Thank you, Mr. Nikiwood, for the presentation. Very good, and I'll move the motion.
We'll be moving both that. We'll just move first that. A seconder, please, Director Mack. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. And now we're looking at the second that, which needs a 2/3 majority.
And I'll move that.
Moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Mack. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Thank you, Stan.
Thank you.
Item 7.2. We'll break for lunch at about 12:30, is that okay? All right, so I would expect is Ms. Dewar or Ms. Needham here for item 7.2.
Yes.
Okay,
Sure.
a request for decision on the Lillooet Main Street Development OCP and zoning amendment adoption and housing agreement bylaw. Please go ahead, Ms. Needham.
Thank you. So I'm Director Kim Needham, Director of Planning and Development Services here at the SLRD. Ms. Dewar is on vacation, so I'll be presenting on her behalf. She's been working on this file. Back in June, the board gave third reading to the OCP and zoning amendment bylaw. This bylaw will enable the Lillooet to develop 53 residential units and 6 commercial units at their site in Mount Currie. We have prepared and the Lillooet have signed a housing agreement that is now ready for 3 readings and adoption. And we're also requesting that the zoning and the OCP amendment bylaws be adopted today. MOTI, the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, has approved the zoning bylaw.
Well done, Director Mack.
Yeah, excellent report and an excellent project. The only thing in here, it says that the SLRD is going to, I guess, manage the project. Or not, once it's finished, I guess.
Yeah, so we'll just manage the oversight of the covenant. But the Lillooet will take over management of their housing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're gonna be doing sort of from a distance, we'll be making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
Okay, we're not gonna be hands-on. Because I was saying, where do we get the staff to do that, all that stuff? So this is wonderful. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Director Mack. That was a question I had too. Other questions for staff? Yeah, Director Bronson.
This is on reserve, no? Or no?
No.
So it's off reserve. If they were to do an addition to reserves, we would have no role?
Yeah, this is on fee simple land currently.
Yeah.
They may do in the future, they might do an addition to reserve. That would be their prerogative. And the covenant we would still be on the covenant. The covenant would run with the land. Interesting question, though. I'm not sure how much authority we would have once it turns to reserve. But this particular agreement is really dealing with the facts as they are today. So we can't predict what will happen in the future.
And is that a discussion point for you in a planning process about the applicant's desired approach and whether or not addition to reserve makes more sense? I'm thinking of Sinnock as an example in Vancouver, that the decision was made to treat it differently from a planning perspective than it would have been if it was technically in the city of Vancouver.
Yeah, well, through the chair, technically it's, it is fee simple land, so we're treating it as any other applicant who's applying for a rezoning on fee simple land.
Thank you very much.
Other questions for staff? Thank you. I've enjoyed following this project and the report. Project. Do we have a motion? Director Matt, we do the first 2.
We're doing first 2. Okay, I'll move that. Add that.
And Director Demare is seconding. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, those two are passed. And item 7.2, request for decision. The Watt Main Street Development OCP and zoning amendment adoption and housing agreement bylaw. And there are 4 that's associated.
Well, we did
We did this one.
Yeah, and then the next.
Okay,
So the,
I'm behind here.
the housing for 3 readings of housing.
I'll read that 3 readings. I think that
So we're, Squamish-Lillooet Regional District Housing Agreement Bylaw 1391/2023 be given first, second, and third reading, moved by Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Mack. Anyone opposed? Seeing none? Motion carried.
And I'll move the next that.
option.
That
I'll
it be
second that.
adopted. Moved by Director Mack, seconded by Director Rainbow. Is there any opposition? Seeing none? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you very much, Ms. Needham and Ms. Stewart. Yeah.
Thank you.
And now we have Ms. Brenda Coldenbrander beaming in. To talk about item 7.3. The zoning amendment bylaw number 1742/2022. This is electoral area C. Various bylaw amendments. Good morning. Good morning, Ms. Coldenbrander. Please go ahead with your report.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my name is Brenda Coldenbrander, and I'm the planner that has been working on Amendment Bylaw 1742/2022. So I'll just provide sort of a quick overview of where we're at with this bylaw. It's already gone through sort of a number of processes, and I'll just explain what staff is recommending today. So this bylaw was given second reading back in February. Prior to that, there was a public information meeting to kind of gather some initial input into the bylaw. We then held a public hearing on March 29th. So there was a number of attendees. I think there was 32 attendees, including 5 staff members and the electoral area C director. We had 12 written submissions and 5 oral submissions. So most of the concerns that we heard were related to gross floor area exclusions and height regulations. Most of the comments were related specifically to the CD1 zone, so the Wedgwoods Estates zone. And we also heard some sort of comments outside of the scope of this bylaw. So one of those being the height calculation. So how we calculate height wasn't really within the scope of this bylaw. So we made a number of minor additional changes as a result of what we heard in the public hearing. Prior to that, we did make some more sort of major changes after the input we received during the public information meeting. So that included a number of changes to gross floor area calculations, as well as a height increase for the Wedgwood zone. So those changes were made previously. What I'm going to just touch on now are the more kind of minor changes that we've made since second reading. So the changes are some additional changes to exterior spaces and gross floor area calculations. So we're proposing to exclude attached patios at grade from gross floor area. For clarity, we're amending the patio definition to refer to finished grade rather than natural grade, because we did hear that there's sort of some confusion around that, especially when, they're bringing in a lot of fill, and it's difficult to determine where natural grade was, and might not make sense to sort of look at patios based on natural grade. And then there was a correction made to the gross floor area exclusion for outdoor spaces specifically related to carriage houses. the version at second reading read that the exclusion was 25% of the allowable gross floor area of the principal building. So this was a mistake. It was supposed to say auxiliary dwelling unit portion. So when that exclusion was increased previously from 20 to 25%, that was mistakenly reverted to principal buildings. So it should have always said auxiliary dwelling unit portion, as the intent was always to provide outdoor space for the auxiliary dwelling unit portion only when we're looking at carriage houses. We made some additional minor changes to the definition of gross floor area. So just to kind of clarify that gross floor area does include some exterior spaces, and that the gross floor area calculations should be used to really look at what is exactly is included and excluded in these calculations. The definition of rooftop patio, we're proposing to amend that to allow for a rooftop patio not only on the uppermost story, but one of the two uppermost stories of a building. And then the breezeways. So we are proposing to specifically list unenclosed breezeways as an inclusion. We currently, the previous version at second reading only referred to enclosed breezeways as an inclusion. And we want to also list unenclosed breezeways as an inclusion for added clarity. Because the intent has always been for breezeways to be fully included, since they are essentially attaching two buildings together. Yeah, I think those were sort of the main changes. So none of this really is changing the intent. We're just trying to create some additional clarity and a little bit more, be a little bit more permissive with respect to exterior spaces, because we did hear from a lot of people that there was sort of some concerns around including including exterior spaces in our calculations of gross floor area. So yeah, I'll turn it back over to the board, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Director Mack?
So are open breezeways still included in the gross floor area then?
Thank you through the chair. Yes, so they've always been included. The intent here is just to kind of clarify that, because it's not spoken to in the current gross floor area calculation.
So I guess my concern is that's not really part of the livable space of the unit. So I have a little bit of concern with that. Because that definitely could impact your gross floor area to some degree. So anyways, that's just my concern.
And so Director Herford and then Director Petting.
Thank you. The report mentions the inclusions of carports in the GFA exclusions, and the rationale for not excluding that is that the carriage house accessory building where the garage carport is typically the primary use, with the auxiliary dwelling being the secondary use. And that's actually correct. When I think about the livability of these spaces, often when the carriage or auxiliary dwelling unit is rented, it's just the living space, and the tenant isn't guaranteed access, and rarely, if ever, has access to the garage. So I think about the functionality and the livability of these spaces, I think that should be a consideration in here, not just the visual appearance, because we're creating housing to be functional. We're creating parking, there's always parking challenges when these types of density are introduced to an area in general. And I just wanted to sort of challenge that assumption, or maybe introduce another perspective on that. So I'd like to understand that rationale more deeply, because to me, that goes to some livability and functionality of these spaces once we've worked hard to motivate their creation through things like what we're doing here. So whether that's the group's feedback on that, or maybe staff could comment on that perspective, or if this has gone awry in the past, and this is, so we're comfortable with where we are. I just found that part kind of conflicting for me.
Ms. Needham or Ms. Colander, staff?
I can probably answer that. Yeah, I guess just to provide a little bit more rationale, specifically with carriage houses, the intent is really to limit that size of the building to 200 square meters. So the changes that we're proposing to the gross floor area for carriage houses and for accessory buildings are actually much more lenient than what the current bylaw would have allowed. There's actually no exclusions permitted at all right now. So I think with the carport specifically, we only provide that exclusion for a principal building. Because again, with accessory buildings and carriage houses, we want to ensure that we're sort of limiting the visual size of those buildings. And we do feel that carports could be easily enclosed to create additional livable space as well.
Thank you.
Any more questions for staff? Director Pettingill, sorry, yes, you're on the list already.
So I just want to clarify that among with the changes and clarifications, there is an exclusion of gross floor area around primary residences as well in the proposed changes.
Yeah, so the existing gross floor area calculation only applies to principal buildings. If you look at the existing bylaw, there's just that one calculation that applies to principal buildings. It's sort of not super clear in that bylaw that it doesn't apply to carriage houses and accessory buildings. And yeah, as part of these changes, we are proposing some sort of additional exclusions across the board. So I don't remember exactly what the ones are that apply to all buildings. I think one of them is exterior wall thickness. So we're proposing an exclusion where exterior wall thickness exceeds 6 inches. But yeah, largely the principal building one kind of remains the same. It's just about formalizing some exclusions like attics and crawl spaces, which I don't think we spoke to in the existing bylaw.
Okay, so just so I'm clear then, in terms of principal residences, there's no change in gross floor area exclusions for patios. So there's no change there, is that correct?
Oh, sorry. Yes, we are actually proposing to increase the exclusion permitted there. So it's currently 10% for unenclosed balconies, patios, things like that. So we're proposing to increase that to 20%.
Okay. And I guess I always have in my mind these days, affordability and the original design of this whole development was not with that in mind, I don't think. So it's strange to try and retrofit that now, although desperate need. But like, what is the rationale for including versus excluding patios and gross floor area? Like, I guess in my mind, it's to shrink the building size. That's the sort of primary reason, and in theory, then it's a little more affordable. Is that the thinking, or it's just a visual thing, or like why?
Yeah, I can't speak to originally why that 10% was kind of decided upon for principal buildings. But I think we are trying to be more lenient here with the changes that we're proposing. And yeah, with carriage houses and accessory buildings, it really is about kind of the visual impacts. And I guess the same could be said for principal buildings as well. So yeah, it is about kind of restricting the size to some degree.
And is there any sort of, I guess, meaningful concern that increasing the exclusion just makes much bigger homes and therefore much more expensive and unattainable? Or is that really sort of 10% one or the other is not too consequential?
Seeing that Ms. Needham would like to answer that?
Yeah, the exclusion really is about enabling more livability in terms of outdoor space. So they can build bigger decks if we increase the exclusion. Otherwise, that's cutting into their GFA. So it's really about allowing for more livability with outdoor spaces.
Oh, Director Crompton, please. Yeah.
Thanks for the report. Doing these zoning amendments, I just wonder if we've thought about waiting. It sounds crazy, just considering that maybe in 6 months, the province is going to apply new zoning requirements that are going to change a tremendous amount about the way we do things. I know we're a long way down the path, so that the reason I hesitate is that sounds like probably a bad idea. But I just wonder how we're thinking about sort of a promise from the province that a lot of the way we think about this is about to change.
With the introduction of allowing for
Yeah, quadruplex by right.
on single lot
Yeah.
zones. And yes, that should go to Director
Yeah,
Needham, I
I'll
think.
speak to that. I sit on a group, the Association of Regional Planning Directors, and we are actually preparing a statement to the province with respect to what Premier Evie was speaking to in terms of the 4 units per lot, because there are obviously issues related to unserviced areas within the electoral areas. And so I think that legislation is a ways off. And with respect to Wedgwoods, there are a number of issues that we do feel are pressing. And also this bylaw applies to the agricultural areas of Area C. And so those are things that need changing in order to sort of keep up with the regulations. So I think we'll deal with what the province has to say when we get there. And yeah, who knows, we might be back again with a new bylaw amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions for staff? Seeing any, Director Knapp?
I'd like to move this.
All right. Moved by Director Knapp, seconded by Director Rainbow. Is anyone opposed? Seeing none, those 2 dots are carried. Thank you. Yes, Director Demare.
Director Bridge-Jones, thank you. I'd just like to make a comment. I did go online to that public hearing. I was a little bit late, but the chair and staff did an excellent job. That was really well held public hearing.
Thank
I
you.
just want to say that.
Compliments are always welcome. So we have time to move on to 8 with staff reports and other business. CAO verbal update.
Thank you, Chair. 2 items. The first item is just to share with the board that our intent would be to forego the Q1 financial update this year, which is a common practice. Because we, as you heard during the budget presentation process from Ms. LaFrance, we've been looking to upgrade our financial and budgeting software for quite some time and have not been able to do it. So still operating with spreadsheets and the like. And we really need to get that work done. And the time for the next budget process is actually approaching pretty quickly. So our intent is to forego that Q1 quarterly update. And if there was anything that was urgent, needed to come to the board, it would. But it's really to get on with this Aggresso Unit 4 upgrade and try and move our financial planning and budgeting system forward, and we can't do both. We've been delaying this year after year after year, and so I just wanted to let the board know that our intent is to do that. Secondly is to try and set a date for that, for a special meeting of the board to deal with the Lillooet landfill RFP. And we'd like to propose a date during the week of 11 May to see if the board would agree to that. And we proposed 10 o'clock on the 11th of May.
10 o'clock on the 11th of May, that's a Thursday. Thank you, Director Mack.
Do we have a PVIS meeting that day?
That afternoon, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, very good.
You said 10 o'clock in the morning.
10 o'clock in the morning.
And this would likely be remote.
It would, yes, yeah.
Okay, so a remote.
Just the one item, is it?
Just that item, yes.
Other questions for CAO Dalton? Do we need to just schedule that or move to hold that meeting? Okay,
That's
all right.
Thursday, May the 11th, 10 a.m.
Thank you, Director Rainbow. Seconded by Director Hopwell to have a special meeting remotely at 10 o'clock the morning of May 11th to do with the RFP for the Lillooet landfill.
Thank you.
And anyone opposed, seeing none, motion carried.
I won't be there. Either will I. Well,
I will certainly.
I may be available by video.
But it still looks like
We're all on video.
we'll have forum.
Oh, I know, but there's a may in there, and maybe.
In May.
In May.
On May 11th. Thank you. Now we are looking at the
Just reporting my
development
calendar.
application. Should I try and do this before lunch? I think so.
Oh, yeah.
8.2.
Yeah.
And Ms. Needham's here, so that's great. We're looking at 8.2, the quarterly development applications report. Staff, would you like to report on it? No? Okay, Brenda's gone. Thank you, Brenda. But I see Gail Harris is here. Okay,
Well, I'll move proceed if there's no questions, doesn't.
Director Mack, are you seconding?
I'll second it.
Okay, moved and seconded. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. And we also have an information report on the unpermitted sign proliferation on the highway.
Yeah, it's interesting. Where is it? I'll find it.
There's some questions, right? Questions. Don't seem to be able to. All right, I'm not, there's a report enclosed in the package, nothing more from staff. I will entertain your comment.
Okay, thank you. Through the chair, I'd like to know, so we do have a sign fine of $2,000, $2,000 penalty. And that policy was erected 2011. Do we ever use that? Do we ever charge anybody? Do we ever have any fines going out like that?
Through the chair, a lot of times we don't have, we don't know who has posted the sign.
But wouldn't the company be responsible for that sign?
Sometimes they're just going through another company that's put up the sign. And sometimes it's not even on land that's, it might be on crown land, it might be on, you know, land that's not there, so we don't normally do that. We have not done any removal until this point.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but it's just.
I'm just wondering if that would be something that we should be looking at to. Maybe we could put a sign up to say that we're gonna find somebody $2,000 if they put a sign up. It just hilarious, right? I just think that, you know, we're missing a little bit of revenue there. My other question is, the current bylaw, last dated 1999, states 400 meters from the boundary line, but under the Motor Vehicle Act, it only says 300 meters from the boundary line. So I'm just wondering if there's any, why? Why do we have something different than the motor vehicle law?
That's a really good question. This bylaw needs to be cleaned up.
Updated?
Yeah, it needs to be updated, it needs to be cleaned up. Yeah, and this report really is just to advise of sign removal, but we will be coming back in the near future with an updated version of the sign bylaw for your
Okay.
review.
Excellent, thank you.
Director Richmond.
I think it's pretty clear in the report, but just for my own comfort, the report states the sizes of the signs. This won't impact like farm stand signs and that sort of thing, right? I just want to be sure. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Um,
Comments? Yes, Director
Yeah, I
Rainbow.
was. Found some of these a bit confusing because they're old photographs, aren't they? And some of the signs of whether or not they are changed, but the one at the outbound station one. They've changed that completely, and I asked him about that, and he assured me that he was complying with our bylaw. That big wooden frame you've got there, they cut it down to get it to the right size. So but it's included in the list of ones that should be removed.
Yeah, if it's not associated with the business, and this photo was taken, I think, before Outbound placed a sign on it. It previously, I think, had advertising for a sign for a company that was off premises.
Yeah, it had several ads on it for
Yeah.
various Squamish businesses.
Yeah. So if indeed it is associated directly with the business on the premises, then we won't remove it.
Yeah, and it's smaller than that. They've reduced the size and it's strictly for outbound station now, so. Okay. And I think on the mining ones, they're we're not dealing with those anymore. So is that Chatterbox Cafe one? Is that okay because it's on mining property?
That's right. We don't have jurisdiction on lands covered by the Mines Act.
Okay. That explains why they got their check back. The mining museum applied for a variance.
Yes.
Yeah, but they didn't know why. So I'll tell them.
Any other questions or comments? Motion to receive the report. Thank you, Director Hoffball, seconded by Director Turford. Any in opposition, seeing none, motion carries. Now, I'm very happy with 8.5, request for, no, 8.4, request for decision, appointment of the corporate officer and deputy corporate officer. So moved by Director Crompton and seconded by Director Rainbow. That effective May 8th, Angela Belsham is appointed as corporate officer of the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District, and effective May 8th, Kristen Clark is appointed as deputy corporate officer of the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your dedication, good work, the SLRD, congratulations. Now we're moving to 8.5, request for decision rescinding the previous board appointments to the solid waste management plan monitoring. I'm not quite as happy about this one.
So
I'll second it.
Okay, Director Mack and I are no longer on that committee. In opposition. Aside from my disappointment.
Prove your performance and this won't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Mike. And that, the motion is carried. Now. Is this complicated 8.6? I don't think it's complicated. The request for a decision for proposed statutory right of way for telecommunications equipment over a certain portion of 405 Landfill Road in Lillooet. Our staff going to talk about this, so the report is pretty extensive. And so
I did notice a typo.
Oh,
In the first that, it's the residents of electoral area A. No, sorry, no, it's right, it's B.
and that's where
It's
we
not-
are.
it's
We're in
not-
area B. It's okay, so we've got a question from Director Hopple. So the way it's laid out is perfect, as usual. And go ahead, Lori.
So thank you. I just want to clarify that this is an installation of a fiber optic line through an existing TELUS utility line. So there's no tower. Is that correct? There's no tower?
That's the way I read it.
Or is there?
They're not requesting the installation of a tower. They're requesting use of existing conduit. That's the use of
Right.
existing conduit.
So it's just the fiber optic line going through. So in the future, if they were to request a tower on this right of way, they would still have to come back, correct? Or would they, if they had the right of way?
That's good.
I believe the statutory right-of-way document that they provided is a little wider than that. They would, let me just pull it up here. So, what, as presented, they have the right to place, construct, install, operate, maintain, repair, occupy, use, remove, modify, or replace on or over the lands, equipment, anchoring mechanisms, cables, wiring, fiber, conduit, and facilities for telecommunications, data transmission, power, and grounding, underground ducts, support structures, fixtures, equipment enclosures, and other fixtures, chattels, and improvements. And any related works.
So I have a problem with that. So if there was, so there's a tower that just went up in Lillooet and it was on private land. They pay $1,000 a month for this tower. So if we're going, and we're charging them $1. I think that's a missed revenue opportunity. And I'm not saying that, you know, I mean, it would be located in a good section because it's up in the mountain, it's up, you know, way above, it's, but it's one thing if they're going to put fiber optic lines to the existing lines, it's a whole nother one, I think, if they're gonna have a tower, and I think we need to look at that.
Yes, thank you. We can definitely narrow that wording, but we can also maybe go back to them. And bring this back next month.
I don't know how the rest of you feel about that, but.
Pretty fine with me.
The timing that they were looking at.
Is summer 2023. So they're currently in the area. They're mobilized doing work throughout Lillooet to do the upgrades, and they expect to be getting to this area sometime in the summer, which is a bit vague, but I'm assuming kind of June, July, August.
Well, I'm okay if they go through and do what they have been scheduled to do. I'm just not okay if they put a tower there. And I mean, when you look at where they're putting this, it's right along the SLRD. When we're talking about, you know, raising money for the dump fees, it's right on the same road. Why would we not take both of those and kind of work them together? You know, I know it's, you know, I'm just saying if there's an opportunity to have that, I think that we should be looking at more for a tower going up. I don't think it should be written like this. So. like I said, I'm good for them to go ahead. I just am not good if they're gonna put a tower there. Without some sort of compensation to the SLRD.
Does that require a resolution?
I would be most comfortable to go back, clarify that, get the wording of the statutory right of way narrowed to make sure that that.
Just tighten
But
it up.
not,
Right,
yeah,
for sure.
and
Great.
bring it back.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, Director Demand.
I've got a question. Why would they put fiber optics to the dump, to the transfer station? Sorry. So the only reason they do that is for a cell tower. There's nothing else there. It's not going to any private properties. That's basically the end of the road.
Okay, that's another question.
I think, I'm not sure if they've got a telephone line along there. If they did, they would have had to have a right of way already. Right? So, I'm with Lori. If there's an opportunity to do a lease, I think a lease would be better to make some money out of it. Because what's it serving? A fiber line. Thank you.
Okay. If you finish your comment, I'll move over to Director Pettingill.
Yeah, I think I appreciate the approach of going back and getting clarity and maybe narrowing. I think we have supported the expansion of broadband internet access and so on. So on that perspective, I'm a bit hesitant to put up barriers, and I'm not sure what our general practice is in terms of expecting lease payments and so on. We're also asking to facilitate this expansion. But it also seems like they're maybe doing something they're not being, it's not clear they're actually doing what they propose they're doing, or that there's not something fun. And so I would like a better understanding what actually is happening here.
Fair enough. Those are some questions to be clarified. And on that note, we would just leave that with staff and look forward to hearing more about this at a future meeting.
Maybe just a motion that staff address the concerns raised by the board and bring this matter back.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Director Hoffman, seconded by Director Benoit, and no one is opposed. Thank you, motion carried. And I saw some pizza boxes going by. I've got my eye on the ball. So I'd like to adjourn for lunch until 1 o'clock. Thank you, Director Anderson. We will reconvene at 1. Ladies and gentlemen, declare that as the all powerful chair here. Thank you. We reconvene with item 8.7. The information report. Is Eric back with us? No. Not yet? Not yet. And Suzanne's coming. So we're just waiting for Ms. LaFrance. There she is. Welcome back. We're looking at item 8.7, of course. I'm just getting it myself. The information report on the BC Hydro payments in lieu of taxes. Would you like to give us a report, Suzanne? Thank you.
Thanks. So not a presentation ready for this, but just information for the board's review of the BC Hydro payments, and that the General Government Service will receive a little bit more of the BC Hydro this year because of the increase over 4% from previous years. And I'll just take any questions that anybody has.
No, Director Demare, for starters, yes.
Good. Thank you, Director LaFrance. I'm just curious if it could be changed where that extra little bit of funds could be put into the general select for the electoral area directors. We've
So
used
Sorry.
general select a number of times now for funding food banks. And I think that could be one of the ones that it could be used for.
Yeah, so that would be changing the policy. So this is all based on the BC Hydro policy. So we would have to open up that policy in order to change that. Right now, it's specific to general government receiving the additional percentages over 4%.
What would be the process to do that?
I think we have a policy committee and potentially that's where it should start.
So not necessarily waiting for the 5-year audit review, which happens in 2026. That would be a way to look at it sooner. Do I understand that?
I'm assuming that's possible. I don't think that the 5-year has to be adhered to.
I wonder if we shouldn't wait till Kristen comes back.
We definitely should wait till.
If we
We'll just
open,
take a deep breath.
we open up that policy, I don't think you can do it just for one little part of it. We open it up and we're looking at the whole policy. The potential is there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff in there.
I'd like to look at an amendment. You know, as part of it, but we'll have to ask Kristen.
And I do, when I was looking at this, had to remind myself that we're not talking about the policy. We're talking about how to disperse the funding, and it's according to the policy, right? Okay. Just wanted to be in already. No problem. Thank you.
Director
Recently.
Director Clark.
So I think we did a review, was it last year?
Yeah, it was just completed.
Yeah, so I guess if the board passed a resolution to bring that forward again, it could be brought forward again.
I would like to do that.
Okay, moved by Director Demare, seconded by.
No, I have a question about that. So what is it that you want to change about this? Do you want to change that the allocation of area A, B, and the District of Lillooet be turned over to A, B, C, and D?
No.
Okay, because this is just the extra amount, right?
Yeah, this is the general select.
Right, of all the 4 areas,
4 areas. Yeah,
but not,
there is an account.
right, yeah.
Yeah, and it's there for that all 4 electoral areas benefit from that general select.
And this is a super important discussion, but I think it belongs with discussing the PILT policy, right? Which is not what we're doing right now.
And we would.
Yeah, reviewing the policy, and my take on it is that we make an amendment to that policy on that one specific topic only.
Are you proposing that we do that now or when
No.
we review the policy? So you have a motion.
We have to make a motion to bring it forward.
And also there's an issue of capacity. So this would have to be plugged into the work plan somewhere.
Director or CAO Dalton, did you want to comment on that or?
No, Ms. LaFrance took the words out of my mouth. I would like to be clear about, so the way I'd like to see that transmitted to staff is to come back with feedback on when that can be done, where that can be built into the work plan. And I don't know, Director LaFrance, do we need any further clarity on what question it is we're to come back with. I'm not,
Yeah, I would like to make an amendment to the policy whereby any extra increase on the percent that BC Hydro gives to us, funds us with, go to general select fund. Okay, so that all 4 electoral areas benefit from it.
So that will be an increase over.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just trying to get the motion straight. Okay,
In excess of 4%?
correct.
The policy says at the moment that if it's in excess of 4%, it goes to
Cost center housing.
General government will.
federal government.
Yeah, so, and I'm not sure if this is time for questions on the motion or.
Well, maybe for staff, and we have a motion that hasn't been seconded, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, the motion is
It's been
going to be.
seconded by Director Mack. I didn't,
Yeah.
okay. Okay,
So I guess I have a question. If it's seconded then, wait till it's seconded?
it is seconded.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
So, I, as an alternate, I was at least one of the discussions. I remembered it. My recollection, it was quite involved, the whole thing. And I do remember a fair bit of discussion about what happens if there's more, and unless I'm misremembering, like this topic was covered last time fairly recently. So I'm wondering what has changed that we need to change that allocation? Because it seems to me this was part of that last discussion.
Director Demare?
I actually don't recall that one piece of it. This is,
My memory's holding.
Yeah. in my short time as a director, this is the first time that it's happened.
Where we've had an increase in the overall PILT funding that exceeds 4%. That's what's different here, and that extra is what we're talking about, how that feeds that.
Right, and I guess my recollection was that scenario was discussed and it's in the policy and that was laid out. And so, yeah, I'm just wondering, so we feel that we didn't discuss that piece enough, we want to come back to it as opposed to something has fundamentally changed that's driving us to change our more recent decision.
Mr. Franz, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, there's nothing that would be driving this decision other than Sal's request. So it's up to the board to either approve that. There are many policies that have to be updated. And so this would fall in line after those policies that need to be updated. So it might not be till next year, to be honest. But we can put it in the queue for updating.
Okay, Director Hochul, thank you.
So through the chair, historically, how often has this happened that it's been over 4%?
I can check. On the top of my head, it's been pretty often over 4%.
Okay, you don't need to check, that's okay. I was just wondering if it was an ongoing thing, like it came up all the
A
time.
few years ago, it consistently was under, and then it's been consistently over. So it varies. It all depends on the BC Hydro calculations that they do based on assessment changes.
Okay. Thank you.
And Director Demare.
Yeah, in the table below the very last page, it actually has the increases. And this is the first time that it's been brought to the board that where this money's going. That I'm aware of, because it's got 2019 or 2020, it was 4.68, 2021, 4.99.
Yeah, normally we don't bring this to the board. We just have the capacity now to give more information to the board than normal with increased capacity with the finance department.
Oh, I see.
We just follow the policy normally, and so yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
So we have a motion and a seconder. Comment, Director Crompton,
Can I ask a question?
please, yep.
So
a report like this is created based on a request from a member of the board? That's not what happened. Okay.
No,
Good.
this is just information for the board because the budgeted amount for general government's BC Hydro portion is higher than budget now.
Yeah, I misunderstood them. Thank you.
This is a happy circumstance overall.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I just
Yeah, yeah.
misunderstood what was being said.
Do you want to review what the motion is? It would be helpful for me. Chris or Sal, do you want to repeat your motion? Or want me to wait for?
I'd like to review the build funding policy and specifically just one item, which is the increase over and above the 4%, where it goes to.
Okay, where that gets allocated to.
When the staff have a time to present it.
To add that policy review in the
Yeah,
queue
in the queue.
with other policy reviews, and it was seconded by Director Mack. All right. Any further discussion? Yes. Director Crompton.
I'd like to understand how we decide if we have capacity for something like this right now, because, you know, we have our board governance thing coming up, and I think when we are making motions here, it'd be nice to know what we're not gonna do in order to get this onto the agenda, because my understanding from our strategic planning session was that we have more to-dos in the queue than we have ability to do them. So I'd like to understand what's going to be removed from the work plan, or maybe nothing. Maybe this is like a very quick piece and it won't require us to remove anything, which would be great, but I'd like to understand how we decide whether this gets on or not. I'd like more information about what we're not going to do in order to do this.
And I see Director Mack and Director Demare and also CAO Dalton. Would you like to start?
Go ahead, I'm happy to weigh in.
Okay. Russell?
My understanding is we're not taking anything out. This is going at the bottom or of the queue, and it's gonna be addressed when time comes available. And staff will figure that out when they knock something off the top, this thing just keeps moving up and eventually it'll get dealt with. But it's not gonna override or jump ahead of something else. So staff will put it in line. If it's number 10, it's number 10 or 12 or whatever, and it'll move up accordingly.
And this is for the question to staff. My understanding, when we looked at, we had like 50 of these things, like.
Well, this will be 51.
Yeah, but are we wanting to have things added to the list that will not be accomplished? That's my question.
Okay, Director Demare, and then we'd like to hear from CAO Dalton. Move back to you, Russell.
Yeah, I think we've got that lower part, it's called fuel. And that's where it should go into there. And each department, as they whittle down their list, and correct me if I'm wrong, so the finance department, they'll go down into that fuel and pick and get it onto their list. Okay. To me, that's how else are we gonna get stuff done and get it onto the table?
Please proceed, CAO Dalton.
Thank you, through the chair. So it's a great question, and it's a process that I think we have to evolve, and we've just started to have conversations now that the board has a strat plan and established priorities around how we manage new items. In terms of something that a board director wants to put on the table, a piece of work that will take staff capacity, it's very difficult to make that assessment on the fly. So one thing I would suggest is if a board director says, this has got to get done, it's a priority, I think whether it's more important than what's on the board action plan or not, I think it's a good practice to let staff go away and report back on all these items. So that there's clear expectations, similar expectations held by board directors and staff in terms of what can be accomplished. Because I would suggest we don't want to go. We don't want to be in a situation where we are now, where we have a fuel with items from 10, 15 years ago that are, that are there that. I think we can be a little more deliberate about that and be on the same page about what we're working on, when and why, and what those priorities are. So just adding an item to a list that grows over time will get us right back where we've always been. And so that might not be a clear answer, but I think the answer is we've got to develop that process. And the first step is, if you've got something you want to do, we're not here to say no. Let us go away, come back and say, here's where that would fit. So even when we put an item on the fuel, I'd like to see us get to the point, and we're not there yet, but I'd like to see us get to the point where we say that item, based on the finance work plan right now, that's the latter half of 2024, or it's Q4 2023. So at least our fuel is deliberate and it's meaningful, and it's not just a list of things that sits out in the ether somewhere.
Okay, and Director Matt.
No, okay.
Okay. We have that motion, yes, Director Fountain.
I wonder if it would be wise to then defeat this motion and then move another one, asking staff to come back with a report that on sort of scoping, like a scoping report on this particular item, so we can start that process of asking for advice from staff, rather than adding this as a project that gets accomplished right away.
Mine wasn't to accomplish it right away.
Okay.
No, I got from Director Demare just to be added to the list of tasks of finance tasks. And
I guess, okay.
yeah, Director Herford and then Director Fountain.
Well, thank you. To that point of adding it to the list of tasks, we just heard that the list of tasks, yes, it could be infinite, we could put on there, but actually what's accomplishable isn't. So to me, there's a secondary step, which is how we report out on the prioritization of the tasks, including or excluding this one. Doesn't really, just I'm agnostic to that, but like what that actually looks like. So at this point, if it's added to the list, I don't think that moves this forward in any way. That more crucial step is prioritization of those lists, and how do we report out on that? And the motion's kind of silent on that, and perhaps that's a secondary motion. Or is there another way? And this is, I know there's a motion on the floor, but I'd like staff to comment on that, what a second step of this could be that would accomplish that, so we all have a clear understanding of if or when we can tackle this, or how we would ever come to that conclusion. I suppose I evolved into a question for CEO Dalton as I was speaking.
Yeah, and thanks through the chair. So I don't think we necessarily need a resolution to do that work, but what I would propose is we're moving in that direction, but we're not there yet. So the fuel that was presented to the board in January and in our Q1 report last month is simply a list of things. The next step that you're speaking of is to bring that fuel back mapped to time. So we're going to go through it and scrub it down as well. And I think it was mentioned, and I forget who did raise the question, are there things on there that we should be looking at putting in an omnibus resolution to say, their time past a point, or they're no longer priorities of the board. But our next step is to bring the fuel back with more information for the board to consider. So I'd like to see us scrub the fuel down, and for the items that are on the fuel, indicate a timeline there so it's meaningful. And then if there's something on there that the board says, no, that's actually more important than this, which is planned to be moved this year, then you can make that determination and we can move forward. So the tool right now is just it's a to-do list. You could put anything on there. The next step is to tie that to time and enable the board to look at it from a perspective of prioritization.
So speaking of time, when was that? Like, what's the timeline on that piece of this? Because my fear is that, or my concern is that if we do this now as an example of something to add to the list, and I'm not diminishing the sort of weight of the issue, it kind of opens the door to just like, well, let's just keep piling stuff in there until we have this piece of work done. And I want to sort of have this conversation now, rather than every time a motion comes forward, well, we'll just put it on the list and then prioritization is coming, because we already know that what's there is unwieldy, if not unmanageable. So what's the timeline on that in the rough sense?
Yeah, through the chair, it was April. Great,
so it's done.
but it's, how did you like it? So ideally, it would be at Q2 in June, but I can't commit to us getting there then. But what I would say is it's under construction, and I think when we really need to have it complete is Q3, when we hope to engage the board on 2024 prioritization. So between now and Q3, I'm confident we can get that fuel to a point where it will enable the board to have those types of conversations. To me, the process we're trying to put in place is a strategic planning process. It's a business planning process where the board sets its priorities for a fiscal year, reviews progress every quarter, and at every quarter, the board has the opportunity to say, what's changed? And so this is an example, and it may not rise to the level of the board getting excited and saying, let's fix this now. But if it did, then the time to have those conversations in a more deliberate, informed way, I would suggest is every quarter. So when we report with progress and the fuel, that's the time I would suggest board members come with their ideas as opposed to intermittently just adding to a list, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm conscious that we have a motion on the floor. I'm just trying to formulate where I'd like to go with this. But I think that having, often when in my municipal experience, something comes forward like, well, let's refer this to the next year's budget process and we can look at the prioritization at that point in time. So some mechanism of where to put this so that it's not on the individual directors to just have notes or have their own tracking system, but we can put it somewhere that can be addressed quarterly. And is that a mechanism that you would appreciate or that you exist? And what do we call that? So if I was to amend a motion, propose an amendment or make a subsequent motion. So it goes right plus spot.
And the fault is mine for not explaining this well, but that's the fuel. So the fuel is a running to-do list that should feed the board strategic planning process every fall and deliberation on priorities every fall. It's that list that I would suggest is the start state for what are we going to focus the staff on this year. We're never going to be able to accomplish it all. So we'll start the year with the fuel. But that fuel should be mapped out over time and there should be some rough prioritization. And then every quarter, that's the document that I think the board can look at when it wants to ask itself, what's next? What are my next priorities? How do I get them on the list? So we have that. It's just very immature. It's that follow-up action list, and it does the exact same thing that you described in your municipal experience. It's that parking lot or that place where things go to stay inside that strategic planning cycle.
That's helpful. Thank you, Director Hoffman.
Okay, I just want to ask, like, we're talking about $17,383, correct? Would it not be easier just to make a motion that I'm not making a motion, but would it not be easier just to make a motion to have that put into the what do we call that fund there?
General select.
General select, as opposed to bringing back the whole policy if it was just brought back recently?
If I understand it, we'd be stepping outside of the policy then.
So that's not.
Please proceed.
We could have a notwithstanding clause.
Okay.
Notwithstanding the policy.
So I'm just wondering if there's an easier way so that we're not putting it into the field. I don't know what you.
I think for the electoral areas long term, we need to look at that amendment and make the changes if the board says so. And the only way to do that is to bring it forward with a review of it. Because in the long term, I think that's where that fund should go. But that's my own opinion, and that's why I'm bringing this forward.
Okay, well.
I'm okay for this year that $17,000 can go to general government, but in the future, as you've seen it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're pretty comfortable with the
Yeah.
motion as it stands and it's been seconded. We reviewed it. So we should call the question here.
Can I have the wording of the question of the motion again, just so I'm clear?
Please, yeah,
Okay.
then let's.
This is what I propose that I heard. That BC Hydro payments in lieu of taxes policy number 2.2 be reviewed specifically that the following amendment be considered. The annual increase increment in PILT funding in excess of 4% be allocated to general select funds rather than cost center 1,000 general government as currently worded.
That captures your intention very well, I can believe, and you're comfortable with that, Director Mack. So that is the motion. Call for a vote then.
So then just pretend that's a one-time motion and therefore the policy would still come back at another time for future years. Like, I'm just wondering, so that would solve Sal's issue for this year, but it would still need to be looked at.
That doesn't change any
doesn't change
allocation
anything.
of funding
It's to,
For this year.
yeah,
for this year.
Okay.
It's just gonna bring it back
Change the
as a.
Okay, got it. Sorry. Thank you.
Director Murphy?
Well, I'd like to see something in there that the consideration of this project comes back, you know, at a quarterly reporting time or whatever that timing piece. So if there's something in there that sort of spoke to that, because this, I don't think addresses the sort of the pieces of the conversation that really concern was. So there's a timing piece that maybe can be added. I'm trying to think of what that amendment would be, but if maybe the mover is further along in this thought with this.
I think though that.
Or perhaps that's the position and that's still.
We're hearing that's already in the works. This would be added to the tasks and be incorporated into the fuel, which will come back to the board as part of the routine quarterly updates. And at that point, we can move things around if we so choose and agree.
Can I make a recommendation? Is that okay based on? Perhaps the language is in these types of resolutions to express the board commitment to moving this piece of work onto the fuel is to say that maybe that this item gets deferred or referred to the fuel, which then gets reported back to the board. Because then every question like this, the board debates, there's that sense of this is going to have a capacity impact where it's going to change our priorities. Maybe that's the.
I appreciate that suggestion. I think this is good training and sort of discipline for us going forward. It's not, it's might be overkill for this particular issue and the scope of it to some of the points that have been made, but I think I do think that's important. So I'd propose an amendment that its destination is the fuel for rather than directing action as it's stated there. I don't know how that best fits for the specific wording of this, but that's what I'd like to do.
And by fuel, you mean the new fuel?
Yes, I mean, the fuel, that we present to the board. Yeah.
We've got old fuel and new.
Yeah.
And future. And
Simple.
so
That's what it is, right? I didn't expect. I'd like it to go to the old fuel. But
So I think you're asking
This fuel.
to amend this to say that this policy, we have it be reviewed,
Policy review be
added
added
to the fuel
fuel for future
for
prioritization.
consideration of the following amendment.
okay,
Is there a seconder for
we
that?
need a seconder for that
On the amendment?
amendment.
Sure.
That would be Director Pettingill, yes.
This is what I was
The amendment.
suggesting previously, which
Okay.
was to defeat this and basically do a scoping process, which I think I'm excited about. It sounds like the word we're using for scoping is fuel, and that sounds great to me, so I'll support this amendment.
Okay. Any other comments on the amendment? Let's vote on the amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none. Director Anderson, are you with us? Yes. Motion carried. And now on the main motion, Director Pettingill?
Just a clarifying question, is this where we are now, does it constrain us in considering this for the fuel to this one specific issue, or is this the policy as a whole? And I guess the reason I'm asking is it's not clear to me that this is a standalone thing. I don't know if I can look at this in isolation or not. So on the one hand, I don't want to reopen the whole thing if it was just done, but it's not clear that this is a standalone piece. And so I don't know if I could support it as just, we're just gonna look at this one little piece, because
If I'm understanding it, this is an example of an action that resolution that directors are making that has impact on the workload of the staff, and it needs to be incorporated into the new fuel that we're all engaged in and pretty excited about. So it's just an example of how we might want to be working.
yeah, and I understand that piece, but what piece are we putting on the fuel? Is it just this one narrow change or
On this
the
one.
overall policy? Because I don't know that this makes sense as a narrow change or not. To
Would you like to
contemplate.
comment?
So Ms. LaFrance may be able to speak to the bylaw on whether looking at that one piece makes sense or not.
Historically, opening up the policy is opening up the policy. So it could entail a lot more work than just changing one little portion of the policy.
However, the resolution is pretty specific about it, that it's just to look at that particular piece. So does it make sense for us to proceed with this the way it is?
Yeah, I think that the narrow scope is fine. It's going to be amongst a bunch of other things, and we're going to have a prioritization exercise where we're going to understand where this fits, and that'll come in June, correct? That sounds great to me. I'll vote in favor.
I'd just like to ask for my own understanding. This was due to come up for review in the normal course in 2026. Was that before the end of this term or after? Do I have the time frame right there, Ms. LaFrance?
Sorry, I don't quite understand the question. You
In the
want to know
normal-
if it's within the current board's term? Sorry.
And are those timelines all still applicable? I think they have to be because that's in the policy that it will be reviewed every 5 years.
When is the next elections?
2026.
October.
October 2026. So likely it would be reviewed before then. Odds are.
Likely.
Okay, that's enough on that.
But the board might decide it's a matter for the new, that it should be a new board item as opposed to an old board review. But
Can we make a resolution now about that?
No. But I think Director Hochul had.
I just
on
have a
this
clarifying
current
question.
resolution.
I was just gonna ask the same question if it was gonna be before the October, but my other question was, I'm still not clear on if this, because Ms. LaFrance, you say it's gonna, when we bring back this policy, it's gonna bring back the policy in its entirety. Are we going to be able to segregate this one section and do it, or is the whole policy gonna be open? Like, so can I bring something else up about the policy? Not that I have anything, but I'm just saying, is the whole policy open?
That's,
You will.
and I do as well.
No.
So,
I just want some clarification if we can in fact isolate it so that we are not talking about anything else, or is it open? Because that makes a whole lot more work, like you said.
There's always that risk. I don't think there's a way to limit that risk. If you open up the policy, that there'll be more changes.
That is a very good answer. Director Pettingill?
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, I wouldn't be able to support just putting the narrow thing forward, because to me, what this is about is, do we have sufficient funding and cost sharing between electoral areas and not, and that's the fundamental issue, which to me is the whole policy thing. So if we want to put that and do it sooner than the 5 years, then we can put that on the fuel and have that discussion. But taking off this one little thing by itself and hoping we can deal with that and prioritize that alone doesn't make sense to me. So if we're putting the whole thing on the fuel, I could support that and we'll prioritize it later. But just the one isolated thing, it's just not clear to me that gets at what the real fundamental issue is.
So let's proceed with this motion as it is. All right, then I think we voted on the amendment, we'll vote on the main motion. Kristen has reviewed with us already. All in favor?
So 2 in favor? Everyone else is opposed?
I think I see Director Anderson. Are you voting in favor there? Eric? You're not voting, okay.
Okay, so
And then opposed to Director Naz?
Well, I'm a little confused here on the voting.
Okay.
I thought that you only had to say yay to enable.
Oh, yeah, no.
So if
Oh,
we're
yeah,
voting
sure,
on
I
it,
guess I could just say.
then we don't have to put our hands up. If we
Correct.
put our hands up,
Yeah,
then we're,
okay,
so let's,
apologies.
maybe we should start over.
Apologies. Let's just rewind, delete. We're all clear on what the motion is. We voted on the amendment already. And so I just have to ask for those in opposition. And that would be Director Pettingill, Director Rainbow, Director Hopeful, and Director Crompton.
and
And
Director Anderson.
And you're also voting in opposition, Director Anderson, so that's 5 opposed.
6 in favor, right? Is it a tie? 5-5 and it fails.
No.
Yeah, I think we're missing.
That's exciting. Okay, well, that motion fails on a tie 5-5. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to move on to a request for decision while we, yes,
So that's
that's it.
it. Okay.
That's enough on that topic.
Lori needs a ride.
We need to move receipt of the report.
Aye.
That's fine.
Do we need
Just
to
if it's-
proceed with the report? I think we
We
better.
have a motion in relation to it, but
Okay.
we can certainly receive it.
I think we should receive this report. I'll move that we receive the report.
Second.
Second, please, Director Herford. Is anyone opposed to that?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
No. It's comment time, thank you. I think that was really good discussion. And especially about new items and moving forward, looking at the fuel. That is an important piece, specifically for electoral areas. Because that's where we have a lot of issues in our electoral areas. And trying to get them onto that document, the planning document, is so important. So that was really good discussion, and thank you, CEO Dalton, for explaining how it's going to work, and once you finally get it finely tuned with some dates and so on. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Mann.
Yep.
We're looking at the approval of the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District 2022 audited financial statements, item 8.8. And I'm glad that Mr. Bruntz is still with us.
Are you saying you would have left if you were her?
And I'm wondering if there's questions for Mr. Bruntz on the audited financial statements. Director Hopkins.
So through the chair, on page 247, it states that our outstanding balance is 9,300,000 basically to MFABC, or to our total is MFABC debt is 60,000, but our outstanding balance is 9,000. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
So there's just a differentiation between the SLRD's long-term debt and the rest of the member municipalities' debt. So I think you're looking at the note 5, long-term debt.
Yes.
And so that first portion where it lists the MFA issue And the balance outstanding is 9,296,
Yeah.
693. So that's just the SLRD's debt. And then the debt obligation recoverable from the members is added separately underneath that. And then again, the following principal amounts payable over the next 5 years is just the SLRD debt. And then following that is the member municipality payable over 5 years.
Okay, and then page 255, that's the total of everybody's, the 59 million up in payable up until 20, I think 50 something is the longer.
Yeah, the total for both SLRD and the member municipalities is the 59 million, sorry, 713,000.
I just needed that kind of clarification if I was reading that. Great, thank you.
Other questions for staff? Motion to move to that, moved by Director Crompton, seconded by Director Mack. Is anyone opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have NDIT information report, and will we have different staff for that? Director Mayor.
I'm gonna have to declare a conflict of interest,
Okay,
as my daughter is an employee of BRVCA and my wife is a director
thank
on
you.
the board. Thank you.
Director Mayor is leaving, and I see Gail Harris has joined us.
It's behind you.
Excuse me, but we do have,
Me,
thank you.
sadly,
Excellent.
sadly,
Very glad.
no briefing, but I'll do my best to ask questions if the board has any questions on this. Essentially, we have been approved for 2023, and the main content of that report is the feedback from the two organizations that received the granting in 2022. And Jeanette does that work for us, but she's not here. I'm happy to try and take any questions if there are any.
I read these reports with a great deal of interest, and they're very detailed reports. And I also appreciate that we were able to take the reports and move them forward and make the application without having it be a matter for the board to consider, and I really agree with that. Thank you. Are there questions for CAO Dalton? Will we receive this report then? Motion to receive, Director Mack, seconded by Director Herford. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Thank you. Open that, and yes.
I just have to, I'm double booked. I gotta go to another meeting for a little bit, so I'm gonna excuse myself. I'll be back for the hospital.
Director Richmond. And we're moving on to Director's report. Chair's verbal.
Sure.
And we'll be having a board roundtable. Director Richmond lead. Unless you'd like to say something on your.
Director Crompton offered to do the permanent update.
Perfect.
I assume there'll be as little truth in that one as the usual one.
Bye, Director. Okay, we're gonna start on the left of Director Herford for the board roundtable. And you have a hospital district meeting starting at 3:30. Okay.
Oh, good. I was worried I'd have to rush my
So you'll have
comments.
to be done by 3:30.
But I'll take.
Yes. Thank you. I wanted to let the board know about some interesting things happening with the youth in our community. And we have this is the second year of having a youth council in Squamish. And the first year there was a lot of learnings and trying to understand really what the program is going to be. And the idea is to actually leverage some funding which have been associated with this youth council, which is $25,000 annually, for the youth to advise where and how those funds get spent to benefit the youth in the community more broadly. So this year, the youth council has decided that they're running an event called the Bears Den, which takes place tomorrow night, actually. And what they've done is essentially replicating something along the lines of what the Shark Tank and essentially they've invited nonprofits in the community to come forward with proposals for projects that they could fund. So they opened up the applications a few months ago. We received a lot of applications. The youth narrowed it down and developed a process to do so and so on to come up with the 5 finalists. And they'll be presenting to the Youth Council in the Eagle Eye Theatre in Squamish. The tickets are sold out, and the winner, the one project will be selected to receive the $10,000 in support to execute their project. So this will be the youth directly involved in the decision making of programming and initiatives on behalf of youth. So I'm really excited to put that direct control of some funding. We obviously do other things to support youth in the community, and they're an advisory body in that capacity, but some direct input into the direct control of where these funds go. So it's gonna be really exciting event. And every time I spend time with the Youth Council, I'm just so excited about what the future holds. We've got some really, really bright young people, young leaders coming up through, and it's really exciting. So when I'm back around this table next month, I will be reporting out on which of the projects was successful. And I don't want to diminish any of them by trying to go into what the finalists are. And but I'm really looking forward to that. And I'm sure some of the folks on that on the Youth Council, I foresee them sitting around this table or tables like this in the future. So it's really uplifting when some of the other work can sometimes be the opposite as we grapple with the challenges that we all have to. So yeah, the future is bright, and I'll report out on as to which project was successful and how the night went next time we're here. And I want to split our time. Councillor Penningo has an update on some other youth-related topics for the community, but
Could I just ask?
Yeah,
you know,
please.
you do report out on that? It would be great if you had some pictures too.
oh yeah, we can do a more fulsome piece. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering if you could look up a Zoom thing and have some of the youth on it to report instead of you.
They do a better job.
Yeah, I'm also bored by your report.
Yeah.
For sure. I share that thought.
No,
Yeah.
they definitely, Youth Council will be reporting out to council in Squamish, and perhaps we can find a way to maybe compile a highlight video or have them attend. We'll just see what the capacity is. But yeah, thank you for your interest. I think that's great.
Bravo. Did you want to jump to Director Pettingill? We'll skip the Crompton altogether.
Sure.
We'll come back to you, Jeff.
You don't need to. The other, I guess, big announcement is the opening of a few things altogether. So Spirit Creek, which is I believe it's 72 affordable housing units operated by Sea to Sky Community Services in partnership with BC Housing. So much needed affordable housing, which is fantastic. At the same as part of the same building, we have the Sea to Sky Foundry open, which is counseling and other services for youth, and it's made with the Foundry. So it involves the Foundry model, very focused on care and accessibility for youth. And then the Squamish Youth Hub is a piece of that too. So we had to basically well past end of life, had to tear down the old youth hub. And so everyone was really eager to see this open. So it all came together. There was a totem pole carved by C. Appleton and the youth together, Art Harry. And so just all these things together. Unfortunately, I missed the actual ceremony. I was out with COVID, but I've seen all the pictures, and it's incredibly exciting. And I just actually, the SLRD Area D, I believe, helped fund one of the rooms, I believe, or provide some funding, and I don't know the name of the room. Do you know, Director Rainbow?
I don't know the indigenous name, it's the bear, it's the kitchen area.
So.
I'm not quite sure what the.
Great.
That was our idea actually from the SLRD, that the various donors, rather than calling it the SLRD kitchen or whatever, that we come up with some, that they choose some indigenous names for it.
Yeah.
I think they've done it for another building.
I was lucky enough not only to attend, but to be asked to witness the ceremony, which is a specific, function inside that. And it was really moving to see that whole project really holistically involve the nation from before the construction to commence. There was a blessing of the land and throughout, and then to officially open the facility. There was the unveiling of the carving and witnessing of that during ceremony. So I think it's a really interesting example of how we can all move forward together, and how many. It's hard to describe how complex it was to get this to come to fruition through various funding pieces. BC Housing hadn't been very supportive of creating space that wasn't housing. And it was challenging to create even the envelope, if we could build it out to be a youth center was the original concept, and it evolved into this foundry piece, which is really a wraparound of services for youth. And so it's a tremendous success story, I think, and it's really nice to have a facility that is truly nice to spend time in. The old facility was the old decommissioned police station, which was a cinder block building, and it was about as inviting as a jailhouse can be. So this is just such a remarkable change, and it's directly adjacent to our skate park, and it's great. But I'm sorry to steal your to continue to go on. We have time to fill. We don't have.
Don't feel you, Bill. We still have a couple of items on the agenda. Director Compton, Whistler.
Thank you.
You're all alone on Whistler.
May 7th, we're having TEDx Whistler, and the speakers are Kim Campbell, our 19th Prime Minister, Heather Paul, who runs the Squamish-Lillooet Cultural Center, Georgina Dan, who's Lillooet, and she's a cultural ambassador at the SLCC, Salem, Jackie Dickinson, who runs Worcester Community Services, Maxine Bruce, who's works with the Lillooet, is on their council, and then a couple other people that you may not be as familiar with, but that's going to be a great event, May 7th. Excited to see that group of people, especially presenting on that stage. So it'll be, I think, pretty special. Our chair, I don't know how many, I think a bunch of us were at the UBCM Housing Summit, and I tell you, it was exceptional. And I just am so proud of Councillor Ford and all of her work, Chair Ford at this table, and all of her work for our province. And I think what was so inspiring and made me so excited about her work was just the tone that had changed from 6 months ago, when the story was all about how municipalities are, the problem in the housing continuum, and we're the ones holding everything up. And that reframing of we're all in this together, and having the province and having municipal staff and having elected people all at the same conference, considering the issue together rather than sort of pointing fingers at each other. So I thought she did a terrific job. I thought UBCM did a terrific job, and I thought that was a really important event for us as we consider how we can get more housing supply into the world. So kudos to her and to UBCM. I also wanted to mention that, where did that go? Oh, you guys, I'm sorry. One other thing. Well, if I remember, I'll let you know. Yeah. What's that? Oh, I know, sorry. On the note of housing, on April 27th, the Worcester Institute is hosting the housing symposium. And so it will have, panels will include, first panel includes Dwayne Jackson, who is the president of the Worcester Development Corporation, Kate Roddick, who works for Vail Resorts and runs all of their housing, and Steve Bailey, who was one of the founders of the Worcester Housing Authority. And then the second panel has the director of housing for town of Vail is coming up to present to us. Al Rain, who's the mayor of Sun Peaks, will be there. And Dale Mickelson, who has just come on board with the municipality, but was the development director for SFU for the last 10 years. And they'll be talking about different housing models and how those housing models can actually produce affordable housing for communities. So I think that's going to be a really interesting event. April 27th, as part of the Canada West Ski Areas Association event. So there'll be a lot of people that run ski resorts there, but then it's also open to the broader community. And I think there's been about 100 tickets sold to people that aren't with the Canada West Ski Area Association. So it should be a really great event, and everyone is welcome to join us and buy tickets. And then finally, I wanted to be able to tell you last week, and I think last meeting, it probably seeped out a little bit, but we're so proud to have hired Karen Elliott to be a general manager at the municipality. And so she started Monday and had her first meeting yesterday. And so we have two new general managers in our organization who are tremendously effective and talented people. So we've got a senior management team that's now really full and strong with Karen leading a department, which is pretty exciting.
Congratulations. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Flying
And my report on Pemberton is also complete.
Thank you. Now we're going to move to glorious area C.
Yes,
Mr. Matt.
well, I'll be very brief. Last week, I met with the two folks that are going to present to the hospital district a couple of times on the needs that we need locally. Well, it'll benefit the whole corridor, but our Pemberton Health Clinic, as they will explain, is time for a new one. But anyways, and then on Monday evening, I met with the Pemberton Farmers Institute, and that was really good. And the concerns they have for some of the, zoning proposal changes that we have for the ale agricultural areas, how it's going to affect them in a negative way. So we got to figure out how we can work through all that. Farmers are having a real challenge keeping it together, and we keep saying all the time, we're here, our thing is helping, boost agriculture, and we keep putting more and more regulations on top of regulations, and it just seems to be impacting them in a big way. I always use I was saying to my cousin before that meeting, I went and talked to him, who's a generational farmer here. I said, I always use you as an example for buying equipment. And, tractors are 100,000 or 200,000. And he just laughed and he said, the new one that's sitting outside the shop here, I just paid 400,000 for it. And I'm going, my God, and then, so I started thinking, okay, 400,000 for that machine, but then it's all the implements that go behind that machine, which are worth, it's just, I don't know how many millions of dollars worth of equipment this guy's got. So how many bales of hay do you have to sell? How many potatoes do you have to sell? All that stuff just to keep it floating, right? So I think that's something that we as a group of people, we have to really pay attention to that. And I said to those people on Monday night that I think it's more of our job is to listen and then just stay out of your way and let you do your job. I mean, these people, some, like I say, they've been farming for generations. And they're still in business, even in these challenging times. So I think it's very important that we let them make a lot of the decisions for their future and not us who are not in that business. Anyways, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Demare.
Okay. I'm going to read from a media release that the BRVCA did. The Economic Development Committee of the BRVCA has been awarded funding for a 2-year project from the Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program, Economic Capacity Stream. The intention of the project is to build local economic capacity by recruiting, hiring, and training local economic development officer to guide, assist, and advance community identified economic priorities and initiatives, as well as to further develop community capacity with the support for community groups and organizations with developing skills for grant research and development. Some details include funding amount of $100,000 over 2 years. We'll support this project starting in April 2023. The project will hire a locally connected person at a half-time professional salary in and around including works of $40,000 per year for 2 years. The project will also provide that person training at SFU in the Community Economic Development Program for approximately $5,000 plus travel in 2024. In addition, the project provides $10,000 over 2 years for grant writing capacity building support for community groups. So that for our community is going to be great because now we're going to have our own local economic development officer. The second one is the BRVCA Trail Committee was funded $10,000 by the EAD directors, and the Trail Committee now has secured the coordinator, and it just happens to be a young woman that has moved back. She was raised and born in at Gun Lake.
Mount Order?
Yeah. Born and raised, but she wasn't born there, she was born in Lillooet. So, that's for a 1-year position, and I was the trail committee chair. I started that society or that committee, and she's already come to me about three times, and we've had one hour sessions. And it was interesting. The very last one, she wanted to know about recognition. She wants to start a recognition program for that trail committee. And I just happened to have built a recognition presentation back in 2014 or 2015 for the BRVCA. So we reviewed that, and she's got some new ideas that she wants to initiate. So I'm really looking forward to her skills and her desire to move that committee forward.
Thank you, Sal.
Yep.
Eric Anderson, I forgot you first. Yes, hello.
That's quite all right, Chair. I hope you can hear me well enough. We have in our regional district 4 community forest agreements. It happens that an event taking place in the Pemberton Library may be of interest. This is coming up on Friday, April 28th, may be of interest generally. At 7 p.m. Friday evening, the 28th, Professor Harry Nelson will be speaking on the topic of managing BC forests, a system in flux, with particular reference to the community forest programs. The event is being hosted by the Speltcomte Community Forest. There are going to be ongoing perhaps some prospects for collaboration among these 4 community forest agreements. Mayor Herford and I are directors of the Squamish Community Forest joint venture partnership with the Squamish Nation. And one of these kinds of collaborations might be a partnership with UBC. Professor Nelson does offer the opportunity to use some of his grad students for projects that we may devise. And he has been among some of his colleagues offering this for some time when we're ready for it. So anyway, Professor Harry Nelson speaking at the Pemberton Library, April 28th. The general topic is community forests. Where are we headed in BC? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Harry Nelson, Professor Harry Nelson, do I have that name right? Okay, I do. And Russell's taking notes. Thank you. And now we're on Mayor Lori.
So I was away 3 weeks out of the last 4, so I don't have anything to report. But I wanted to tell you that, you know, we went to Rarotonga, so Fiji, Tahiti, Lori and Frank in the middle, and the Cook Islands and Rarotonga. Right below that is New Zealand. And I did have this regional moment there where I thought, oh, you know, so New Zealand actually helps out the Cook Islands, Rarotonga now in many ways. And they've actually, Rarotonga has now New Zealand dollars. And this has just happened in the last 10 years. But one of the things that happened down there is a lot of Fijians, because they don't make a lot of money, they want to move to New Zealand to work there. So New Zealand put in a law because after COVID, of course, everybody, you know, dissipated, nobody had any workers or anything. Rarotonga was suffering because everybody kind of moved out. And New Zealand put in this law that said anybody from Fiji that wants to come to New Zealand to work has to spend 3 years in Rarotonga working there first, and then they'll get a pass to New Zealand. And I thought, what a great, I thought of it as a regional moment, how we are all together in this region. And there are ways to remember to help each other out without that monetary value. It was just, you know, them doing something to help another country out without doing it for any other reason or giving them money to just help them out. So that was my regional moment. Other than that, you know, I really didn't think that much about the region. They got a great tan for us Scottish people and the English there.
I covered it up.
Almost there.
Okay, so I'm going to pick up on a couple of things that other people said. First of all, Russell, when I was driving up this morning, I listened to CBC and to a program called The Current. They had a section on farming, which was fantastic. It was really, and it talked about the kind of things you said, the cost of the capital, the family farmers, you know, family farms, people retiring, you know, the kids not wanting to continue and so on and so forth. And it's archived. I think you can get it as a podcast. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Jack knows another sense.
Matt Galloway.
Yeah. But did you hear it?
Yeah.
Oh, I just thought it'd be something. I'm going to get it and share it with people in my area. So, okay, that was one thing there. Friday is the House Sound Forum. Is it? Who's going to that? Oh, good. Okay. I just thought I'd mention that. And it came to mind because the signs that I got some funding from the board for signs for Tulip Ferry Creek one at Britannia. And they're ready. But, well, they will be next week. I was hoping that I'd be able to bring one of them to the forum, show people there and give other people an idea of what they might want to do. But I'll when we get them installed, I'll bring pictures and report that to you. So that's the signs. If you're driving down through, you know, past Britannia, the new coffee shop is now open. It's been open for a couple of weeks now. Outland Station, and is staffed and they're keen and they seem to be doing really well. So I encourage you to, on your trip, plan to just pop in there for a coffee and something, a snack. Yeah, what else have we got here? Outland Station, that was that.
Their burger operation is up and running currently as well.
Yeah.
It's not just coffee.
No, oh, no, I'm sorry, that's right, the food as well, they've got that going now. Community, I love it when we talk about the Whistler Community Forest and the Squamish Community Forest, which are housed and placed in Area D, and we're very pleased to be able to host your forests. So yeah. Ahmed and I have had a conversation about this actually, and he has some ideas.
I don't know how Jen does this job.
I think we can somehow sort of recognize the SLRD presence, if you like, and
Yes.
look at that more regionally rather than just. Anyway, we didn't have an argument about that. We have some.
We're open to taking funding.
Yeah.
For sure.
Good ideas. Yeah, yes. Well, we'll be talking to you about that. And the last thing I just wanted to say, when Alvin was talking about the youth and the involvement and having youth make decisions about things that are going to directly affect them, because that sort of takes me back to my first career. And one of the things I found in secondary schools was that if you involved youth in making decisions about things that were critical to them in the school, if you involved them right from the start, the planning, the full discussion, being able to be involved in the decisions, they buy into it, and it's so much more successful than the principal or the teacher just dictates them, this is how it's going to be. And I think sometimes in our communities we lose sight of that. We don't recognize the strength there is in our young people, the abilities they have, and the fact that if you go to them and ask them to be involved and to do things, the payback is enormous. So I'm sorry if I sounded critical when I said have them present, but I was just sort of following that thought through. So well done. And I will now shut up.
Thank you.
I'm just thinking about it.
Insulted everybody at the table.
Yeah, I didn't boast the fact that I've been away for 3 weeks as well. But I haven't. I can prove it.
Okay, Area B, we're on fire in Area B. We've already had 3 fires, in fact, and we have 1 burning now just above Squamish Reserve. That came to me by the TNRD director. She was quite pleased, I think, that the fire wasn't in her dirt. It was just right next door. And I must say that our staff have been pretty good in getting on the communications and then making sure that Patricia gets on the bulletins, because of course the rumor mill goes just insane. I think I have a niece who's like my early warning system. He phones me based on whatever hysteria is on Facebook. I get an idea of what's, but we it was really, actually BC Wildfire Service responded nicely and quickly, and it's pretty neat, partly because we've been through some of this before with McCabe. Chief Justin Kane knows the process, and they've been on evacuation alert in that community, but it's been fairly orderly and managed. And I'm just reading an update from Mark Phillips that it looks like it's being held and the fire's going in the right direction, so that's good. But the fact that it's that dry, that's why we need some rain. And I echo your comments about the farmers. Our farmers are really struggling, and we've lost some. We had a decolonization workshop, and 4 of the 5 mayor and council from Lillooet were there, which is pretty fabulous. And it was even said, one of the First Nations elders was like, well, the mayor should be here, kind of a comment. Here's the mayor. That was kind of cool. And I'm really happy that Area B helped some of our select funds with SLRD help fund some of that. And similarly, this hub if you read that report, you can see all of the sort of spin-off benefits that are happening. It's very good. And most recently, the One Garden up in Oklahoma, which is Ticket Reserve, is working in partnership with the Hub and Laughs, and there's some really good momentum there. Now, there's a lot of funds available for that kind of operation, so that's good. And I think that's all I have to say. I think we should move on to.
Sure.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I remembered what I'd forgotten.
Oh, I thought you already did.
No, it was,
Another.
am I okay to?
Yes, please.
So we have the first person who was given freedom of municipality in our town is Myrtle Phillip. I think most people know her name. The second was a fellow named Gary Watson, and Gary Watson passed earlier in April. And so we're doing a lot of sort of remembering him and celebrating all that he has contributed. But Gary was a massive stalwart in our community and he will be really missed. So on May 2nd, we're having a reception for our council meeting, and the executive director of the museum is going to do a retrospective of Gary's life and contributions to BC, but also to Whistler specifically. So I'm just glad to mention him.
Yes. Thank you. And welcome, Mr. Buck and Mayor Lou. Hello. The next item, we have correspondence for action. And do I do them 10.1 first, and then we're going to add the Metro Van Britannia? Sorry, 9.2.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you. Go in the window.
I was also raising my hand to move it. We'll just efficiency maximum.
1.2,
Yeah.
is anyone opposed to moving item 9.2, the Britannia Beach dock? Seeing no opposition, that motion is carried. Thank you. Now we're on correspondence for action. And we start with 10.1, but I have to remember to add the mental meeting one. All right. Yeah. Okay, so this one actually comes from area B. District of Lillooet request funding of $38,300 from electoral area B tilt funds towards the replacement of the pool sand filter for the Lillooet District Rec Center swimming pool. I'd like to move this, and I'd just like to say that I am so grateful that the District of Lillooet made a very difficult decision to support the pool to the extent that you have. And I'm glad to also be able to support the pool and contribute. This is an expensive cost. I'm quite pleased to put this forward, so I'd like to move this. Seconded by Director Rainbow. Anyone opposed? Oh, I'm pleased. Motion carried. Request for funding, Minto Communication Society, geotechnical and structural engineering report and approval. You have to move that, Director Demare?
Yes, and if you read the report, there were some challenges that they came up against, and so I'm definitely going to support this, and I'll move that.
Okay, moved by Director Demare, seconded by Director Back. Anyone opposed? Well, none. Motion carried. Yeah.
Chair, I'll declare conflict of interest to the
10.3.
10.3, as my daughter is an employee of VRBCA and my wife is a director on the board.
Thank you. Give you a minute. I'm just adding.
I'll move this.
Thank you, Director Mack. Seconded by Director Crompton. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that motion is carried. Sally can turn right around. Didn't even stretch your legs. Now we have the item moved out of the consent agenda. The letter from Metro that was item 4.2.2, vision and guiding principles engagement. Would you like to speak to it? Rick?
Yeah, thanks. And the reason I pulled this, so Metrovan is looking for feedback on the vision and guiding principles for their updated solid waste management plan.
Yeah.
And it struck me that, you know, this is an area of our focus as well as a regional district. And the decisions they make will affect us significantly. Things like extended producer responsibility. A lot of us may shop in the Lower Mainland, and so what happens with all packaging impacts us up here. And if we think about diversion and so on, well, where does it divert to? Are the facilities often we depend on infrastructure in the Lower Mainland? And so I think having strong alignment between what we're doing and what they're doing makes a lot of sense. I think our the solid waste and resource management plan speaks to, I think, our principles and values. So I was hoping I could direct, and I'm not sure if it's the staff or the chair, to just, and I'm hoping this is a brief thing, like not a huge 50-page analysis, but like these are the principles we are focused on, and we encourage you to consider these same principles type of idea. If there's a reasonable way to ask for that, or some help here.
So a letter back to Metro Vancouver, talking about how we align with what they are doing.
Or more suggesting that they align their plan with some of those key principles in ours. And I did pull out reduction, reuse, waste diversion through policy, extended producer responsibility, and zero waste as things that really jumped out for me from our RGS and solid waste plan.
Ms. Clark just reminding me that we do have an opportunity to invite them to come and present to the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District Board. That is one of the things offered in just. And C.A. Dalton.
Yeah, through the chair, I'll ask Ms. Belsham maybe, and I'm not sure, Ms. LeBlanc and Mr. Butt may not be probably about as up to speed in this as I am, but there's been, staff has been involved in this process. And so I think what we want to do is find a way to do what you're asking, Director Pettingill, in the most efficient way. And it may have been done, I'm not sure, but I'll maybe ask Ms. Belsham to start.
Yeah, and I may actually defer to Marie Lou.
Okay.
We're throwing the hot potato, and the only reason is because we have been engaged in this process, which is really great.
Good.
And Marie Lou, do you want to speak to what we did in 2021 when they started the process?
Yeah, so really, like, we're always trying to align. There's been enormous work with the previous staff from the SLRD to really align everything in regards of solid waste with Metro Van. Metro Vancouver is ahead of us, I want to say. They have like bigger facilities, they have more staff, and we really try to use what they're doing. And there's a big share of like knowledge and even like information that we share through different groups. And in 2021, we started our kind of first revision of the solid waste management plan with the focus amendment for the District of Squamish landfill expansion. And next year, we'll be doing like we'll start doing the full update of our solid waste management plan. So we really try to align. Every time there's EPR process, so those are the Recycle BC, for example, or Used Oil Association is part of those EPR programs. We always try to align all together, all regional districts, all municipalities to advocate for what's the best and where we see issues and challenges in the operation sectors. So we are really working together, and there's multiple platforms that we have that. There's like different groups, there's different conferences. So yeah, there's quite a bit of share information and make sure everyone is kind of aligning the same way and advocate for the best of our residents to make those programs as user-friendly, I want to say, as possible.
Okay, so that sounds fantastic to me. I just want to make sure that we're pushing them, they're pushing us, and that we're all, and it sounds like we're doing that, so that's fantastic. So I'm happy then. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad we had the opportunity to hear about that.
Chair?
Eric Anderson, please. Yep. Director Anderson.
Thank you. I'd just like to briefly add a couple of observations to the previous two speakers. I believe that in looking at the web page and the link from our document to their engagement process, its structure and organization is something of interest. We will have new actors, new facilities and facility issues, just like they do. And so we can, I think, learn something from how they conduct their engagement process in their plan review. Also, we might in future decide to collaborate with the Metro Vancouver in resource recovery. This is a topic that comes up over the years, and it's in fact referenced in our current plan, which I'll cite just briefly. Following developments in other regions, Metro Vancouver, that are exploring resource recovery options. That's under section 15 of our plan, residual waste management. The waste energy facility in Burnaby is in fact accessible by water from Squamish. And we have in the past talked about a waste transfer station that might be needed in future, planning for that. This was last visited by our Squamish Council in October 2020. We decided to postpone planning for a waste transfer station. This is a long-term concept, but we do need to plan for it. So there are two topics there to add to the list of things that are interesting to watch for, I suggest. Engagement process that they're following, and also planning for potential scenarios for future collaboration in resource recovery, because our Squamish plans to expand our landfill do have a time horizon as to what it's going to be good for. But we do need to think for the very long term and to ensure that our land use planning is in alignment with that, just like our plan currently advises us to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I may add to that, through the chair. So through the, during the Squamish landfill expansion focus amendment process, we did hear about the waste to energy facility. We heard from residents that it was an interest for people. The focus amendment wasn't the right platform to look at that, but it will be looked at during the solid waste management plan full update. And I am sure that we will hear from residents about that, because it is a great interest. In the past, it wasn't suitable, it wasn't feasible as per the technology, but we do have a group where we sit around and we discuss the different options for long-term solution in terms of how to manage our waste. And I am very well aware that the Squamish landfill has a end of life at some point, and every landfill really has an end of life, and landfilling our waste may not be the solution everywhere. So we will be looking into that.
Thanks. I always feel a little more optimistic when I hear from you.
Thank you.
So much fun. Decision on my business. Motion to receive.
So moved.
So moved, Director Crompton, second by Director Pettingill. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Leave the round. Okay, good. Decision on late business. We don't have any late business. We'll jump to director's notice of motion. Seeing none, we can recess for the committee of the whole meeting tomorrow. We're so good. Motion to recess, please. Yep, Director Rainbow, seconded by Director Hospital.
So